The other day I started talking about how there was that, for example, that there's more to us black people than than BCI in terms of like that we should really have a consensus. We black people, black of different nations who have the darker melanin. We should really consider as to what are we to contribute to society. You know, and I know that most people don't consider that as an option or as even a statement because, for example, like there's been so much of things that have happened in the past that people have really considered that we are a problem or a problem that has many issues. So I want to talk to you really quick about the Star Trek episode called The Outcast. There's an episode called The Outcast, and it was a Star Trek Next Generation, and this one happened to be one of those head scratcher ones that could refer to a lot of different things, and some depending on who you talk to or how they interpret it. Some would say that it was about regarding a situation with I won't spoil. Let me just go ahead and walk you through this whole story. Um, in the process, I'm also going to be working on some of my sculptures. This is one of the sculptures I'm working on, and I'm pretty much I have a client who wanted me to have one of these here. This is Jimba, and I'm making another Jimba. And as I'm making Jimba, I'm going to put some colors on it, but I'm not going to do that colors, of course, now because that's a little bit more elaborate than I can do in my current state. What I can do is turn on this fan a little bit. You might hear this fan giving some feedback. And so I haven't done a live video in a while. The last time I did live was actually a little while ago. I'm sitting on my bed and in my room. And so what happens is that I just want to go ahead and just talk with you a little bit about some of the things that are going on. But let's keep the main thing the main thing. I'll go ahead and start talking about the scenario with what happened in the next generation. My kids and I have been watching ever since the kids came back from camp, and I've done with the whole separation anxiety episodes and different things like that, regarding how they've been going through stuff. So what happens is that in my situation, what's occurred is that we've been watching Star Trek: The Next Generation, and now we're up to season 5 of that. And one of the episodes is called The Outcast. If you have ever seen Star Trek, the season 5, there's an episode called The Outcast, and in that episode, it explains about how there is um, um, there's an androgynous type of society where there's no male and no female, or pretty much there's no difference in between the two of them. And so what happens in light of this, I'll just give you everything. I'll just tell you, there's a person named Soren, and a person named Soren started working with Riker, and my son and I have been having this discussion about Riker, but they say some people love Riker, some people hate Riker. I happen to be ambivalent. I think he's cool, but some people think they hate him because of when he first started, his ambition was such, and later he became a different kind of person. But nevertheless, in my situation there with this episode of the Star Trek: Next Generation, regarding the one called the Outcast, it has a thing where Riker is working with a person named Soren, and Soren happens to be they're trying to solve a problem as they go into this trying to find out where the breach of the walls of this void is. They have to go into this void, and they have to pretty much come out together. And incidentally, throughout the whole series, Soren's asking a question about the human race and about how the differences between male and female and things like that, and about giving birth and children and things like that, and how intimacy works, with the male parts and the female parts. Anyway, so what happens in this whole story is like pretty much Soren, who pretty much androgynous, neither male nor female. I guess it would probably be asexual, probably better. But for the most part, though, in the situation, you have this situation where it's like they go from a situation of going from admiration, like she really admires Commander Riker, and it goes from there to like really wanting to be in a relationship with Riker, and then after that was like from admiration to friendship to interest. Then I wrote like a list, right? I wrote a list that way I can actually just kind of explain it better and keep on task because sometimes I just kind of ramble a little bit. But anyway, so there's an interest, and then she gives a warning as to about her society, and her society being that her society won't accept the differences of another because it used to have two genders, and then what happened? Eventually, they merged into one, and now there wasn't two anymore. So they had the human race still has the two, and then what happened was like when they merged, they merged into one gender. They were actually more male than female. It's a pretty interesting little thing. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's kind of like a head scratcher, right? So anyway, so what happened? She determined she was female and she was interested in Riker, Commander Riker. So she being interested in Commander Riker kind of puts this whole twist on this thing. When I sat there listening to this, I was just kind of like, this is an interesting story, and I wasn't sure. I wasn't thinking about like our current stuff, regarding like um, that that pretty much said, she found that Riker was interested, and anyways, long story short, what happened was, she gave the warning that what would happen, society would look down upon them, and they'd give her a re-education, right? If you've seen the movie Sucker Punch, there's a part in the movie Sucker Punch where they, right in the very beginning, they have a thing when they have the thing up against the lady's eye, and about to hit her in the thing, about to give her lobotomy and stuff like that, right? So that's kind of a very horrible thing because as a kid, I was always that was one of the things I was concerned about because there's certain things that when you there's the three things that really bother me is teeth, eyes, teeth, and brains. And I've been watching zombie movies, and the whole thing about zombie movies has been really interesting. Um, because there's a lot of teeth, eyes, and brains in zombie movies. But in a situation of lobotomy is where they totally, they go up there and they change you. And that's freaky because you're being altered and you can't, hit the reset button on that, right? So she gave the warning that if she pursued Riker, that this would happen. That if she were to pursue him in a relationship, it would end up becoming one of those relationships where there was going to be some kind of like a trouble because, or Soren, let's say Soren because but she did identify as a woman, and she looked like a woman and all that. But nevertheless, so she showed that pretty much he showed that there's he was interested in her. She was interested in him, and so she kind of made some moves towards him and all that and stuff. And anyway, so long story short, what ended up happening was like you had it where the warning came to pass. Go up and they were like smooching, right? And then after that, the people came and they saw it. They walked away, and later they said, "We caught you. We know what you're up to." And they captured Soren and they took her away to have a before the brain thing happened. There was a couple of things that happened. There was well, they took her to court to be questioned, and when she was going there to be questioned, she had this thing where when she needs to be more questioned, she had a situation where she had to give a reason as to what's happened before they pretty much warp her brain, right? They're gonna take her brain away. But for the most part, though, you have this thing where when you Riker before that happened, he was talking to one of his friends, Troy, and in the situation with Troy, she had in a sense they've had like an on and off relationship, but before in the very beginning they had a more relationship, but they're more like a supportive friend at this point in the relationship. And then if you watch the show, the Star Trek Next Generation, they have like a weird relationship that they're very friendly with each other, and they have like they're kind of like old friends, like like ex. How do you go now? They're like ex lovers, and that pretty much they're not at war with each other, but they still like each other, but they're not like together. So it's kind of like a thing where whenever there's another lady, pretty much she doesn't get all mad. Troy doesn't get all mad, right? I'm using the wrong examples here. Troy doesn't get mad at Riker, right? Because what happens, they have pretty much an amicable friendship. So when you have an amicable friendship, you're trusting. But whenever she meets with a guy, Riker gets kind of upset. But he never does anything. If you ever see, he never does anything. He just kind of gets upset. But that's kind of it. But as for like Troy, she just has no emotion or doesn't try to take him back from any woman that he's been with, or that he's interested in. And there's one episode. My son and I were going back and forth on this, but it's like he had an opinion about like how Riker has always been. But I said at the end of the day, this is how they wrote him as a character, and this is his character. Some people say it's half the fan base love him, the other half of the fan base don't like him, and that's just the way it is. But that's the way they wrote him. So I mean, at the end of the day, this you can't avoid your script. Not like he's like personally adding his own. It's just the way it is. And I found out today that Riker actually had back problems, and that's why he sat the way he sat. So go figure, right? But anyway, back to the main story at hand. What happened was like you have this scenario where he went and talked to Troy for advice, and she gave him advice, and the advice was that what I'm still your friend, so feel free, you can trust me, I'm your friend, and there's times when you have a relationship, right? when there's a, when you have a relationship with somebody that you have to put an end to it. There was a time when I had a relationship with pretty much my before I met my wife, right? I had ex girlfriends, and each ex girlfriend. We had ended very very well. We ended very amicably. We ended friendship wise. We're still good friends to this day. I'm still connected to all my ex girlfriends. And but when I came to meet my wife, I had to put away all the ex girlfriends and not put away, but just kind of like end the relationship with them. And so it became a point where I had to just kind of like share with them and say, okay, this was like a kiss goodbye, farewell kiss goodbye kind of thing. And what happened was like, they gave a kiss goodbye, and then she was like, Troy and Riker gave a kiss goodbye, and that was cool, that they just said, this is it, okay, I'm gonna go pursue this new relationship. And so she was very supportive. which is like very interesting because sometimes you don't agree with people, but you have to kind of like you have to kind of let people go, and so whether she's still in love with him or even like you have Beverly and Beverly and Picard, they have a like a relationship. It's they just like they like each other, and it's clear to see they like each other, but they're not willing to pursue it. And then it's just like at least Riker and Troy had a relationship, and they did pursue, but then Picard and Beverly Crusher, they never even quite pursued. So long story short, in the they decided to go. He went back to the planet because he was part of the diplomacy type thing and all that. So then the lady met him. The other lady, the lady Soren, she met him, and so he was kind of sitting there, just kind of chilling. Until she came and they went out to walk in the garden. And this is interesting for me, right? Because I was thinking about this because there's a lot of allegories. They say an allegory is good if you can use it for different things, right? But for example, there they were walking in a garden, and like in the garden there was a temptation, right? Like the Garden of Eden, there was a temptation, and the temptation was for them to either pursue this relationship that would be forbidden, or and really to or forget it, right? And so in a situation you have it where Soren decides and she wants to pursue the relationship, and also what's his name, Riker's also willing to pursue his relationship as well too. But incidentally, they get found out, and then she gets captured, and then she gets brought before the judge. And when she gets brought before the judge, they're going to pretty much take her brain, or take lobotomize, like I said before, the sucker punching, where they stick that thing in. Are they going to take her brain and they're going to do a re-education type camp? All right. Now, now I was looking online about this whole thing, and but let me just get to my point, and I'll come back to that point there. The whole thing is this: you have this scenario where it's like you know, uh, the thing is like Riker finds out about this, and they taken her away to court, and they said there's nothing you can do. This is final. They're gonna take her, and they're gonna take her brain away, right? So what ends up happening is that Riker tries to figure out how he's gonna get her out there, but he goes to Picard and asks Picard for permission. He said, "I can't help you because that's a violation of the Prime Directive, and you can get court-martialed, you can get destroyed because of this from the Federation because you're not supposed to interfere with the things of the world." In the case, you have a situation where Data helped stop planet destroying, and he messed with the Prime Directive. It seems like the Prime Directive is giant. It only happens when it's like worldwide cataclysm or something. But when it's like in the case of this one, where it's like it's a single person about to be crushed by society and have her brain removed, or pretty much her brain like crushed, they can't do anything, and that would have been a help for them to actually have helped her to get free because she like they had that before where they had a situation where they did First Contact, where they had a thing in Star Trek where they explained to them about like the new things, and one of the people left left their planet to come join the starship. So that's also like they didn't mess with the entire Prime Directive, but they did take one. In a sense, they abducted one person from that planet, so that person could join the starship, right? Enterprise, and it kind of keeps happening. And also, my old question is that of the Borg. If you ever study about the whole Borg thing, the whole Borg situation is that they're going to take over planets and take over world and assimilate the whole thing. And if they really hold to the Prime Directive, they really should not the thing, assimilate the entire universe, but they interfere with that because that's a threat to the Republic, right? But anyway, so when anything what happens is that you go back to the situation where so Riker goes for counsel, and then he and Worf go back together to try and kidnap her, break into where she's holding her in the holding pen, get her out, and then from there, um, get out of the holding pen and bring her back up and bring her to the Enterprise, and they could be together. And so incidentally, what happened by the time they go down there, they beat up the guards, they get Soren, and they're bringing her out, and she had already been lobotomized. They already had taken her brain from her. Now, this thing was one of the most like I was looking at this and they said this was one of the stories, and I was kind of reading other people's opinion on it because I know my opinion, but I want to hear what other people's opinions are on it because that's kind of the whole take of the story. Now back to my allegory, they had messed with her mind, got her rid of her mind. So the situation with the whole thing, I was thinking about like how it's like, you know, very similar to my situation. I'll tell you about that in just one second. But before that, what happened was that he actually took some steps, and I was talking to my son about this. How he actually took steps to make actions to try and recover this lady, that wanted that she explained very clearly that she wanted to be free of the society she was in. She wanted to be free. She wanted to be with Riker. Riker, obviously, in the situation, wanted to be with her, and it didn't seem like it was going to be like a one-off. It seemed like this was going to be like the real deal. To me, it just seemed like that this was willing. He was willing to risk his whole Starfleet career and no longer be a commander or number one, like the second in command to the Starship Enterprise, so he can be with this lady, Soren. and it seemed like maybe it could have worked. We don't know, because what ended up happening was, before they could drop the needle or drop the hammer, on the needle on the record, or drop the hammer. What ended up happening was that there was an aspect of there was an aspect of, like, they had taken her brain. So now when I look at the situation here, I look about, like, how there's several different takes on this. I'm gonna share my personal story, what happened to us. There was a time where my wife and I, before we became my wife, there was a part where our director had said that he didn't want us to get married until we had actually done raised our support into a significant level, because we were in the process of support raising. Now, support raising, what that means is that when you're a missionary, right, you have to kind of get money supported from other people. They got to come in and tell them your story, and they hear your story, and they decide to give you like $10 a month, or $20 a month, or $25 a month, or $100 a month, or whatever they want to do. So what ends up happening is that when you do this kind of thing, it's like, you're able to go and do ministry work, because you're being supported by people who are supporting you with dollars, right? So when you get a certain amount, we, in our case, we had to get about $4,000 a month. We had to get $4,800, $4,800, which is a lot, a month, to be able to do the work that we're going to do. So long story short, what ended up happening, right, was that there was we weren't able to make it. But before we weren't able to make it, there was a part where it says that before that, before we got married, there was I was in the process of raising support as an individual, right? Because I was already like a missionary. Then I met my wife, and then she joined and then became a missionary too. So what happens is that you have a situation where um, we did not know about the whole, like, how badly racism plays a part, in terms of, like, people's decision about stuff. See, back then, this video was written in 1995, right, or 1994, 1995, around there, and so, well, yeah, or before 1994, so in the 90s, early 90s, right, because season 5, you get into season 7 is 94, so if you go season 7 is 4 or 7, so the 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you're going this, right? So you got, this is all right. So you got 4, 3, 4, 94, 93, 92, 91, 90, 89, 88, about 87. So you're looking about, like, maybe like 87, right? Long story short, right, you go 94, 95, so you're like 93, or 1993, so around the same time Jurassic Park came out, right? So that's approximately, if you're going back to episodes, right? You have this thing where this is happening in the 90s, and a lot of the time there was two things happening in that time. They talked about there's we, in our relationship hadn't started yet, right? So our relationship started back in 1999. So during that time, you had not too many black and white couples seen. It was like an interracial marriage was not really seen. So you have a situation, in this, they weren't talking about interracial couples, but the original series of Star Trek, there was an aspect of that they had the first black and white smooch on TV, right? That was the first black and white smooch ever on television, was done on Star Trek, the original series, right? With William Shatner and O'Hara, their character, right? And so what happened in that character, that was groundbreaking. So Star Trek has always been about groundbreaking and things like that. So what ends up happening is, like, this one episode was actually written, according to what they're saying, to talk about the de gay people, right? To make them no longer become gay, to de gay them, right? To talk them out of that. That's what they're saying, that this was kind of situation. But in this situation, they had no male or female. So some people are saying this is actually one of those trans type things, because now it's a trans type subject. They're saying it's like a reversal person transition from one species to another, right? So so what happens is that when you have this situation where this is being presented, that's not how I took it. I took it as, when my wife and I was getting to get to a relationship or get married, we were told by many people that our relationship would be taboo, right? Our relationship would be taboo, that it wouldn't work out. And so, incidentally, what happened is not so much it wouldn't work out us, it wouldn't work out for the people who would support us as in the ministry, in the church situation. Now, no, I'm not trying to speak to the racism of the church, because we are all aware that everybody has racism, because everybody's racist, right? That's pretty much how it is. May not be say may not be, but they are. Everybody's racist. And what racist means, like, if you believe in race, then you're racist. But if the most part, though, that we tend to have people that we prefer to be around than other people. So they were afraid that by the color of my melanin, my tan skin here, that would be hard for them to support us as missionaries. So they needed for me to raise my support as much as possible, So when I got married to my wife, who is non-discolor skin, that she is American Indian and Irish, that she would be actually it would be our support would be high enough where we can actually continue to float. But given the way the situation is, we had support, and we as when we finally got together, the support started to drop. So it was one of those things where I had to go and find work, and then eventually we got let go of the ministry, which is crazy because usually you don't get let go of ministry for money's sake. You get let go of ministry for some kind of infidelity or some kind of some kind of a bad thing, or some kind of embezzlement, or some kind of crime. But for the most part, though, what ended up happening was my situation was we got let go because of money. Now I'm telling you this because it was like it really hit home to me because there was a time where I had to leave my house, right, and go over into New Jersey, and had to think in my mind that I'm willing to marry my wife regardless of the situation of whether or not to risk my ministry, right? There's an aspect of like, like Riker in his case, he was wanting to risk his Federation status so that he can be with this person, Soren. And he was, I guess, so taken by what this person, he so admired this person. Maybe it was like, out of all the people he ever met, he never had it on the same level as him. Because this person was like a commander too, like, a commander level, and able to handle himself, and they seemed very confident, and he was very impressed by the confidence in this person, even though the person had determined that whether they were male or female at that point because the society had deemed it so. So it's kind of like a whole reversal. They're doing the whole reversal on life. Like they're taking the entire doing what people are talking about. Regarding the whole thing with transgender and people transitioning. It's a reversal, right? It's kind of like an allegory. And so, but in the situation there was a black and white struggle because I remember there was a time where they had George Bush, George W. Bush. Well, he was doing a campaigning during that time, right? And around that time, trying to get for the before 2001, right before 2001, then 9/11, he was trying to raise what is it? He was trying to raise information about his awareness and that he's willing to. They on the books there was no interracial couples at the Bob Jones University, right? No interracial couples. And so in the institution, they would come in, they would you can't be. Now I don't know 100% what they would do, but they just said that you just can't have interracial couples dating, right? So when they had that, when George Bush was going around trying to raise support so he can become president, George W. Bush was going to get support. He brought out, I think, to Bob Jones the third, and he said that I heard that according to Bob Jones, there's a thing in your thing that says no interracial dating, and he said we're going to change that today. And I remember that I was on a bus trip somewhere. I think I was part in my third year of college, and it was like when I heard that they said that this is what do you call it? This is we had my wife and I had already got into a relationship at the year 2000. So 2001 around there is when they had before 2001 2000 is when they said that they had gonna abolish this whole thing with no interracial dating on the no interracial dating in their school system. It was actually on the books and that in like part of their Bob Jones University and also different places there, like different Christian schools had that where you couldn't have interracial dating. And so interracial dating was the big thing. Some people even say that sometimes they say interracial dating was kind of the gateway drug for a lot of the gay movement and the transgender movement. They say that because what happens is that like a lot of things happen with the black struggle, and a lot of people say that the black struggle is similar to that of the gay struggle and all that stuff. But for the most part, though, I don't know. I don't know 100%, but I mean, people have said, and I'm not gonna take away from their situation what they're going through. But for the most part, though, there's an aspect of like, I think more or less, it's not like a Romeo and Juliet type story. I think it's more or less like almost like an Adam and Eve and being banished from the garden kind of thing. And you have a thing where they were in the garden when they got caught, and I think about when Jesus was in the garden and the people came to take him away. You have the part where the Adam and Eve, when they were in the garden, they committed an act, and then when they got the act, they lost their ability to be together. Oh, well, not to be together, but to be in the garden. They were kicked out of the garden. And the part where Jesus was praying in the garden is that the thieves came to get him. So you have those two kind of situations there. That's very similar. That they had this in there, and I don't think they did a garden by accident. I think that garden was actually pretty much a very specific thing to do, because next it was a trial, and there he was on the trial, right? There Soren was in the she wasn't on the trial, and there they were trying to defend. Riker came and said, "Listen, it wasn't her fault. It was me. Please don't punish her. Punish me instead." She resisted. She made up a story just to try. Instead of like in the part where Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Well, Riker tried to defend her with a lie. Even though he was really care, he said, "No, it wasn't her. It was me. It's my fault. Don't punish her." And they're like, "You can't interfere with this. This is the law." And then she says the truth and said, "This is what it is. I believe this, and this." And as she's saying these things, they're like, "No matter what you say, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna lobotomize you. We're gonna take your brain away." So then Riker's like, "You can't let this happen." So he mounts his defense. He goes back up to the starship, talks to his director, back talks to Picard, and Picard said, "I can't help you." He gets his friend Worf, and Worf together they go down to go and beat the people up and take her out, and bring her back up to the starship where she could be away from this crazy society. By the time they come back down, they had already done the brain altering, and so she was no longer that person. She's not back to the they minimized her. They destroyed her personality. They destroyed her individuality, and so the tie into all this is like how we made a decision to not go along with the norm, right? And the norm of the day was not to be in an interracial relationship. The norm of the day was for us to actually raise support as missionaries, and for us to go ahead and do this without the world knowing that we're in together. And then later, we were so high in our support level that we'd be able to, just kind of coast on by. But what ended up happening was that for some reason, people did not like the whole interracial marriage thing, and now it's acceptable, not just in movies and TV and shows, and now it's pretty much everywhere. But for the most part, though, when you have it like that, where people are coming to you and they're telling you that you should do this, and then when my wife was going through the school process, questions about what's going to happen when you go to the South and try to support. And I never thought about such things. I mean, honestly, like I said before, I didn't know I was black until I was in high school. Some of the people in high school made an emphasis about that, the whole black business, Because when I grew up in a home that was about was European. It was like European in terms of like a British European, all right? Because my home country was overrun by the British, and it became part of the British, Commonwealth. So my home country of Dominica is a British colony. Was a British colony up until 47 years ago, right? So long story short, for a long time it was British. Long time they had British teachers, British, and they would suppress your culture and all that, so you could speak the Queen's English, and you had the Queen's currency, and you were Queen's colony. So like America was a colony, my home country Dominica is a colony too. And so long story short, there was aspect of I didn't I was black until people kind of kept on pointing that out to me in high school, and I didn't even know what that meant at that point because up until then it wasn't a black white thing. It was about what can you do, what do you bring into the table, what's your abilities, It's like what's your superpower, and that's how it was. So in this situation, the crime that was committed was that she loved somebody that was outside of her. The one Soren loved somebody who was outside of the situation. She had determined for herself that she was a female, and that she was interested in pursuing the female. She didn't want to just be like androgynous culture of male, no male or female, like the Gremlins. Our Gremlins are just neither male or female, except for that one Gremlin, that's Greta. All the Gremlins are they're asexual. They're not really have no gender dimorphism, so they're not like they look exactly the same. So the male Gremlins and the female Gremlins are the same, because there's only one type of Gremlin. There's just Gremlins, right? So except for that one gremlin who's Greta, and she's a female because she took the elixir or the chemical agent, the splicer, and she became the first and only female gremlin, right? So so even though we refer to a an androgynous species as he, or I guess they, in a situation, but for the most part, though, you have a scenario where what's going on is that that was one episode that my son and I were talking about that. So like to give credence to what he's saying that all the times that Riker is seen, because remember this is how he's written in the script, he's been seeing a person who just like to meet with the ladies. My son says he thinks she's a woman. He's a womanizer, but I don't think that's the definition of what a womanizer is. I think a womanizer is someone who uses the women and accomplishes whatever, and then after discards them. But I never quite see him do that. I've always seen that the women come on to him. If you look at the whole thing with Riker, the women usually come on to him, and he doesn't like shy them away or dissuade them. And that's kind of what we had a big old argument about that yesterday, because I was like, in this one episode, he did everything right. He wasn't trying to be like a womanizer, like he would say, my son would say. Even though, I mean, to be a womanizer means it's someone who uses women and they hurt them. That's what I understand a womanizer to be. And we can look it up, right? But in the case, he would not be in Starfleet for long if that. And there's one time where he did something, and they had a different interpretation of the story, and it kind of made address to his what called, I guess, obscurity at the point. And because it was a man who got killed, a man who got killed. But what happened was they're trying to figure out the details of that, and they were blaming Riker for that. But because he had done something he shouldn't have been somewhere, that actually opened up the whole thing. Is that? But the definition of a womanizer is very helpful because that will help us to understand if that is Riker indeed. Because again, I would say that like, I akin that to when a person who's arguing advantage, and they get something out of them. Now, I don't remember him ever doing anything to get something out of anybody. If anything, again, they've always been them trying to take advantage of him and them doing stuff to him. And the thing about him on planet, the whole planet Riser thing, right? Risa, Risa, that's a that's like him going to like a strip club or something like that, and that's he shouldn't be doing that, right? But the most part though, with regarding that doesn't make him a woman. And so but the thing is, like, my take on his whole thing was that in this episode, this one episode, he was not acting promiscuous. He was not acting. He was actually acting quite upstandard. And if you just took it as an episode by itself, you would see that Riker himself was not actually doing anything that would be like, one against the character and nature of. The thing is, he can. The thing is, he can. What happened? So, but what happened? But just looking at this one episode, there was nobody in this situation. Just looking at this one episode, there was nobody in this situation already. There was nobody in this one episode that was of a thing. He came to of any situation. And also, the situation was in the video was that um he had a scenario of this one where I believe he really cared about the person, because if he didn't care about the person it wouldn't make any sense. It would land flat, because for him to actually do what he did means he had a smidgen and he had a concern. The one that I had a question about was about the girl. My son just brought up an interesting point. He said, did he really love did she really love him back, because it's like, I guess she did enough to say what she said, but at the same time though, when she got her mind wiped, I mean, unfortunately she couldn't love him anymore because her mind was now destroyed. However, before then, she did care about him, and that's the thing. If he didn't care about her, then it's a fall flat. And if he's a womanizer, then it doesn't matter to him women at all. But in this one, his actions showed that he really cared about this woman, and that by him doing what he did, showed that he is more than just just the fact that there's how he was devastated because of the fact that he couldn't solve this one. He couldn't rescue her in time. And they destroyed entire personality. So her whole personality, her whole identity was wiped out. And that's what the whole emphasis was that their society was willing so hard to actually make everybody agree that they were willing to wipe out an entire personality. And that's where the whole thing where a lot of the gay people and the LGBT group and the trans group have seen this episode and kind of cleared it as such as one of the episodes that will be one to what happens when people wipe out their identity or their existence because society deems it so. That's their take on it. They had shown. There's an aspect of, like, when I was talking about courtship and stuff. There's a book by Tommy Nelson. He did the Song of Solomon, and he says when a person like starts to love someone, they begin to admire them. They actually have an admiration first, because you can't just love what you don't know. You can't really, in true sense of love, because to love something is to know something, and to know something about something that's beyond just the feeling. You can't base things on feelings. I mean, feelings they come and go, right? But if you base something on something that this person has shown affection. He showed that he was willing to risk his life and his ship to save them, the people who were on board that ship and stuck in the void, and they were going to die, and they risked the ship blowing up just in time to get him back on board. That was very admirable, because one thing about Riker, he may be have issues with his morality and infidelity, or even with his situation regarding, like, how he's weak towards women and stuff, and he's willing to give in to them. But one thing, he's a very good captain. He has been very much. He is very much a person that has been a very much a person that has been a good captain, and he was always able to save the ship. So when it comes to like when he, even though he didn't rise to captain level until they say he doesn't rise to captain level until another series like further down, but he always stayed and helpful to the ship, and he was always puts the ship first, and he was always like, so he was a very good like second in command, that was one of the things that made him. So whenever the ship was in his stead, the ship was safe. You ever look at it, the ship was always safe, even when it like things happened, the ship was all right. But even so, I mean, the things when he drives like those runabout ships, those little small runabouts, they kind of like always crash. But when it came down to the big ship, he never really crashed the big ship. If you ever look at it so far, up to season 5, I've never seen him have a problem with the ship. But maybe in like some of the movies later. But anyway, we'll come to that bridge when we cross it. But for the most part, though, that's one of the things where it says so the thing is like you have the thing where there's an aspect of these things where but he has always been really good in terms of negotiating, and they call it the Riker technique, the Riker maneuver. you know but it's like the thing is like for the most part though I found that I think of him as a very interesting character. Like he's not like Captain Kirk, from the original series. And not to speak to his defense, but just like in this one episode, I found that he was quite noble in his attempt to save this person. And I can't be swayed on that because I really believe that that was something that was similar to what I had to do. I had to go and face my director and tell him straight up that if I lose my ministry, I'm still gonna marry this woman that I love. So I did that, and we didn't. Later, we lost the ministry because we weren't able to raise our money, but that was beside the point. The point was that we did it. We did it, and we went as far as we could with the ministry, and then we had to abandon the ministry. It's like the ship. The ship runs aground. You have to get off the ship. You can't. The ship doesn't ship no more, right? So, even so, that's all I have. What I want to say regarding that. So there was like so just kind of go through what I was saying before. There's an aspect where it's like they were willing to. He was willing to go as far as he could on this one episode. I want to see more episodes in that because I want to see like how this plays out because they have a residual effect on certain episodes. Going forward. So he might have a different character arc or start changing up some because like there's I don't know this aspect where things might get better because he initially when he first started he was all about like becoming like a his own space captain, but then later he kind of just really in a sense loves the ship that he's on, and I he kind of decided to settle. He found a home that he likes, and that's pretty interesting. Like I think about all the other characters too in Star Trek, and one of the things about like Star Trek is like you have. I remember watching it as a kid, and I didn't really know all the deep themes and stuff like that. I wasn't looking at it like with a fine tooth comb. I was looking at it because we'd always have an episode like one a week, or one new episode a week, and they'd have different things, and it was like there was the obvious Picard, and you knew about Riker, and you knew about Data, and sometimes you see like Troy and all that stuff, and then you see, and I didn't know too much about Wesley. I wasn't all that concerned about Wesley. But then what happened was when my kids started watching this, we have been really kind of fine tooth combing everything and kind of going over the whole scenario, watching stuff, and trying our best to kind of figure out what's the best way to watch. There's a time where when the kids went away for the 63 days, for those 9 weeks, there was we actually put a pause. And we didn't watch another episode of Star Trek. We probably would have been done already if we had just kept on going. But we stopped and we gave a pause. And the last episode we saw was when Data had an offspring. He made his child, and the child was pretty cool. Like he made a robot version of himself. And then after that, she chose her gender to be a female. And anyway, so what happens is so she was like a female, and she at the end of it she died. His daughter died, and without spoiling the whole thing for you, it was like one of those episodes that really held to us because you know Data kind of he went ahead and made his own like robot. And one thing we're learning too is that Data is OP, man. He's just like he's overpowered, man. He's got all the power that you can look at it. He can do anything. I mean, if he wanted to run the ship, he could. If he wanted to be captain of the ship, he could. And the thing is, like, the only reason stopping him, I guess, is some like information, because I mean, it's a matter of, I guess, protocol. If the protocol had changed, Data would be captain of the ship. And I guess that's one of the things. I don't think we ever have a Star Trek where a robot's in charge of a ship, you know, or because that'd be kind of crazy, And I mean, or a robot, android, a robot. A robot has a robot has no what is it? Oh yeah, robot's an android. Because I was thinking about like a mech suit for some reason. I don't know why, but I was thinking of a mech suit. So you have this thing here. This here is like the creature, and this one is ready for painting almost. I just had to make the fins for the fins and fins for the fingers, the webbings, and then so after that I can start with the seal, and then on to the next part. But for the most part, though, yeah, that's one of those things. So lately, like pretty much today at work, I had an opportunity to kind of to do something. There was like a lady there at work, right? One of the customers, and so she had like a giant penguin, and I was like, oh my word, this lady has a giant penguin, and my daughter loves penguins, and so I've made a bunch of penguins already, you know, because it's like penguins are kind of like not that hard to and difficult to make. I mean, not as difficult as making a fish monster like this. This is pretty tough. And so you're making it lightweight, not too heavy, and making it bend and have joints and all kind of stuff that that's kind of a very difficult thing to make this fish monster. This is like that's why this is a commission, my friend, a commission. So anyway, so then this is the fish monster before. This is fish monster, which is gonna be like when it's painted. So this is like a trigger fish. So you have a trigger fish. This is what it looks like without the paint. So yeah, just so you know, the difficulty there. And so what happens is like you have it where the lady she had like this thing um, she had like a penguin, and I went over and I used my tape and I was able to spit out like a penguin in like a few minutes, and I gave it to her and she was like ah, because that's I'm telling you I love the reaction. If you want to make me happy, you give me that reaction, okay? And also if you like what you're saying, please like and subscribe to my channel because I mean for real, I have a lot of people who watch this, but they don't seem to like and subscribe, and I really need that. If you guys can help me out, that'd be great, and I'd totally appreciate you for that. I want to start doing some stuff. Those who become members, I'm going to give a shout out to you in my videos, you know? And so I want to definitely do it. I already have one member, all right, on my members channel. And so the thing is, like, I don't want to just cater to one member. I want to cater to many because, I mean, like, I could make something for one member, and that one member is very important to me. Now I want to get as many members as possible because I like making this. I love talking to people, and it's been a while. If you haven't noticed, it's been a while since last time I did a live video. A live video I'm talking to people because it's been like just a lot of work lately. I've been working so much at my job, and also just the last couple of days we did a square dance thing, and that square dance thing was the best thing. Oh my goodness, that was so cool. I did live video on my Instagram, but it was so fun because what happened was like when you look at how things are, you don't get a chance to square dance every day. You don't get a chance to square dance every day, and square dance is one of those things where it's a special event, and so as a special event, you got to make sure you don't miss those kind of things. So it's like going to like Disney World or something. It's maybe not to that extent, but you know that to get back to Disney World again, if you miss it the first time, it's going to take a lot of energy, and not to mention you already did it one time. So it's like so if, for example, you miss that boat or you miss that bus to go see Disney World or go to Universal Studios, you're not going to get it again for a while. It's like that thing with going to Comic Con. If you don't go to Comic Con when Comic Con is available, you can go to BoroCon, you go to all the different cons out there, right? But for the most part, though, if you don't go to the one that you want to go to for whatever reason and you miss it, then you're gonna miss it for a whole year, and that's kind of the scenario there. So I've been I was hoping that I would have a different outcome by now concerning certain things, right? And so I was gonna do like a Comic Con, right? I was gonna actually get a table at Comic Con and present my wares and stuff like that. I mean, it's still not too late. I mean, it's still got another 2 weeks. But as for I actually put an application in there, and I was gonna have like my stuff be there so I can do some things, right? But the thing is that I can't just see these stuff here. This is my IP. This is my IP, right? My own intellectual property. This also is my own intellectual property. When I start busting on things like Spider-Man and things that people recognize, like Batman, Spider-Man, all these different creatures, on these characters, those are trademarked, right? And so as a trademark, thank you so much. Those are trademark characters. What ends up happening is that you have to have licensing because that's one of the questions they asked me was, do I have licenses goods? So I could be like, nah, I ain't got no licensed goods. But then somebody asked me, hey, I mean, I don't know if they asked me to make it on the spot because I can make stuff on the spot too, and that's what happened. Like today, for example, I made the penguin on the spot, you know, and that's the thing. This one is more like the one from. It's like a trench monster, and it's more like the one from. There's a book. This one is not like a Black Lagoon monster because I think the Black Lagoon would actually be like a freshwater fish. This is more like a saltwater fish, and so as a saltwater fish, you have saltwater. So it would be from the trench. It's one of the trench beasts. So I have a series of trench beasts. So this one here, I'm gonna go ahead and put the paint on it because this here is now pretty much complete. You have the fins. I see you got the fins here. Wait, look at this one. You see, it's hard to see, but like this is like the fins. So you can see the fins there, and it also got hands. It got hands, and it's got feet, right? And it got the hands and the feet and the turnaround foot. And you got the tail, and this is a triggerfish pattern. You see the triggerfish pattern of it all? It's so cool. Yes, so that's one there. This one is Joppa. This one I worked on. This is another Joppa that a customer requested. So this is Joppa, and this is Jimba. So you got Joppa and you got Jimba. See? This is Joppa and this is Jimba. Yep. I should make a mask. But anyway, so I gotta get my mask for Halloween. Pretty much Halloween's coming up in a few, so it'd be good to actually put those stuff together. So that's pretty cool. So I've been working. I had this one here, the one, the mace and the axe, and that's been cool. This has been just fun to show people. You got like an axe and you got a mace, and so that's been cool. All right, so then pretty much I was able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, and it hasn't been an hour yet, but getting there. I wanted to show you guys this. This here, I've been meaning to work on this, and my wife and I have been kind of holding off on this yet, but I need to work on this because this is very important to me. All right, and so she said she probably, when she come back, we're going to work on it today, which is really important because this is felting, you know, and that's right, every man and woman should be able to do the poke felting at least once in their marriage, all right? No illusions there. But anyway, so yes, pokey, do the pokey thing, all right? That's my advice for you today. Do the pokey thing. So you have that there, and then this here is the is my weapon of choice. This is my what do you call it? My needle felting pen. And so what happens is that you have this thing right there, and this is like a very sharp 3 needly things right there, right? This is my felting tool. And so I got some felt, like I was saying before. What I want to do with this felting, I want to actually see if I can make a diplocaulus, right? So I'm actually give it a shot, but see, wool is hard to source. It's hard to source wool. So I have I have deli. This is deli right here. This is deli, right? Deli's right here. And I want to make deli like a, using these colors, right? To make this deli, felting. But I haven't done any felting yet with this. This is actually like, a type of fabric. So this is actually felt fabric, right? And it's a lot of it, a lot of felt fabric, as you can see. Very good, very nice orange, right? There used to be a thing back in the day. There was these gates they had at Central Park, and they were these orange gates, and you had to walk through them. But it was orange, it was so beautiful. This is the same orange color because orange is kind of, I guess, just different shades of orange. But you know, I wonder what, I gotta look it up now. What are different shades of orange? Anyway, so I never quite thought about that. You know, how many shades are there? Anyway, long story short, this is what I want to turn into a creature, and they have a thing where you do a lot of things with the pipe cleaners. So I might just give it a pipe cleaner, see how that works out. So let's see how that works out. I'm going to do that. I also have my spider here. This is my spider, and this is really cool. My spider, and my spider is on my head. So yeah, I like the color orange. Orange works really well for me. It works well with my skin color. It also works well with when I wear black. Not to mention, Deli is orange. He's a different kind of orange, a little shade. This one's more like a yellow, and this one's more like orange. He's like a metallic orange, as opposed to, and he glows in the dark, and he glows in the dark. So my creatures glow in the dark. And when I get done, this one glows in the dark, and this one also glows in the dark and black light. So yeah, so this one glows really nicely. It's really cool. Alrighty, that's all I got for you folks today. Pretty much. My take on the whole thing was like I look at the story, and the story was very close to home for me. It reminded me of a situation where I had to go and do something like that, go against the norm to get my wife, and that was very dear to me. The story that we watched called The Outcast. I know there's a lot of allusions to it, a lot of different allegories that can be taken from it, but there comes a point in every man's life where he has to stand up and make a decision and go for the one he loves, and has to fight the monsters and society in order to do so. So I wish you all the best. I'm going to stop it here. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for watching my channel, and I wish you all the best. God bless you. All right, so thanks for watching. Peace.